Here we are. We're live. Greetings, everybody. This is Pastor Scott Lively with First Century Bible Church and my wife, Ann. And this is a Freestyle Bible study. And we have Kathy and Abe in the chat room from Florida. Hi, guys. And Don says hi. And we are, where are we now? We are, could I shut off the YouTube channel? So we won't have echoes. It'll be good. Can you hear us all right out there? Sound. There we go. All right. Well, we should get started with prayer. Father in heaven, we come to you in the name of Jesus. We thank you for your blessings. We thank you for the opportunity to study your word. Open its truths to us. Help us, Lord, to receive them. Help these passages that are somewhat more challenging in terms of relevance to our daily life, Lord, to help us to be able to glean from them what you have for us. And Lord, help us to be better Christians today than we were yesterday and better tomorrow than we are today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. So, yep, I guess we can be heard. Doug has joined us. Hey, Doug. And I didn't cover the jigsaw puzzle, so it's sticking to me whenever I put my arm down on the table. This is our jigsaw puzzle table, in addition to everything else. So we're going to do Isaiah 15 and more. We'll probably do more reading this time. These chapters are, it's a series of imprecations
And prophecies.
and
Short-term
prophecies about the nations surrounding ancient Israel and Judah. And so we'll just dive right in. And are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
I just wanted to point out that, at least in my opinion, some of the most beautiful poetry that I've read in the Bible is in these. I have no idea why the Lord would couch his rather unpleasant prophecies to these
in poetry,
in gorgeous poetry. And
I guess a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, eh?
I'm not sure.
I'm going to turn the air conditioning back on.
Oh, you turned it off?
I have the blower off. Took your shower.
Oh, sorry. Well,
all right.
Alas.
Now we will get some air conditioning and I won't melt.
Right. And this word burden that keeps coming up in Isaiah simply means prophecy.
All right.
The burden against Moab. Because in the night Ar of Moab is laid waste and destroyed. Because in the night Kir of Moab is laid waste and destroyed. He has gone up to the temple of Dibon, to the high places to weep. Moab will wail over Nebo and over Medeba. On all their heads will be baldness, and every beard cut off. In their streets they will clothe themselves with sackcloth. On the tops of their houses and in the streets, everyone will wail, weeping bitterly. Heshbon and Elialah will cry out. Their voice shall be heard as far as Jahaz. Therefore the armed soldiers of Moab will cry out. His life will be burdensome to him. My heart will cry out for Moab. His fugitives shall flee to Zoar like a 3-year-old heifer. For by the ascent of Luhith they will go up with weeping. For in the way of Horonaim they will raise up a cry of destruction.
For the waters of Nimrim are desolate. Surely the grass is withered, the tender grass died out. There is no green thing. Therefore, the abundance which they have acquired and stored up, they carry off over the brook of Arabi. For the cry of distress has gone around the territory of Moab. Its wail goes as far as Agalim, and its wailing even to Bir Elim. For the waters of Dimon are full of blood. Surely I will bring added woes upon Dimon, a lion upon the fugitives of Moab, and upon the remnant of the land. That is the whole of chapter 15. Oh, Thea's joined us. Says hi, everyone. Hi, Thea. This is it's continuing from our from last week, where we had a series of prophecies against Assyria, against Philistia, now it's Moab. It's going to continue dealing with Moab for the next chapter. Then will be Damascus, and then Ethiopia. If we get that far, I put 4 chapters into the queue today.
Well, here he sort of drops the messianic themes that were all woven into the warnings of the last couple of chapters, and we don't get Satan anymore. That was the interesting part in the last chapter. But this one is unfortunate, because we don't know exactly what happened to Moab during this period. It could have easily been run over by the Assyrian onslaught when they, took over northern Israel. It's right in the way, and it's pretty clear that Moab wasn't around later. So,
yeah, well, that whole territory is now Jordan.
Yeah.
These days, and
I don't think the
capital of
Moabites
Jordan is
are in
Amman.
Jordan anymore. So
No, so these are Moab is, of course, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the 2 tribes that were the origin of which was the incest of Lot with his daughters, and
so they're in the family line of Abraham, coming from Ur.
Abraham's nephew Lot had relations with his 2 daughters and produced the tribes of Moab and Ammon, who were therefore mamzers, and completely forbidden from intermarriage with the Hebrews, the men anyway. There's
Ruth.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of theories about the mamzer ban, and one, I think it may be the majority opinion, that it only applied to the men. It didn't apply to the women, and that's how Ruth could actually be part of the line of Christ. Or it could be that he just simply redeemed the line.
Nobody ever makes any mention of questionable status of Ruth in the whole of the Bible, including
it lends weight to the idea that the women were not included in the ban.
Yeah.
But there's in Deuteronomy 22, 23, 32. It's a Deuteronomy section that deals with the congregation of Israel. When it's talking about the congregation, who can belong to the congregation, it's talking about marriageable partners. And that's why that section begins with no man who has been castrated or has had his testicles crushed can be part of the congregation, because he's not fertile. And, you can't be part of the pool of marriageable, potential mates unless you are qualified for producing children. You're not allowed to have to include in the pool of marriageable people those who are the descendants of adultery or incest. So that's how that's supposed to work. And I don't know how closely they adhered to that, but that's what the letter of the law was. Tatiana Shumsky has joined us. Hello, Scott and Ann. Hey, God bless you. Glad to have you back again.
Who is it?
Tatiana from Springfield.
Oh.
From what used to be New Generation is now Next Generation Church. So I saw a picture on Facebook of Alex. Who was it? Gigantic long beard. Look, one of the patriarchs. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, getting off the topic. Okay, so there's Moab. Anything that you want to address from Moab? Questions from the Peanut Gallery. We've got a chapter we've just read to you. Any comments? Any questions?
Not quite the whole chapter.
Well, we never read the whole chapter. We read all of 15. We haven't finished Moab.
Yeah.
Per se.
I wanted to point out the tone of this. It's compassionate and very tragic.
Yeah.
Isaiah is mourning over Moab.
Yeah.
And that's not right, for an Israeli to be concerned with Moab's well-being, although the Lord had commanded in Deuteronomy that the Moabites should never be militarily attacked and taken over. Still, they were they were not close. And in this case, the Moabites had been teaming up with northern Israel to attack.
Well, they have a history too. I mean, it was the Moabite king Balak that hired Balaam to curse the Hebrews.
Exactly.
And which he refused to do. And then in Numbers 25, he sends in, since he can't get the wizard to curse them, he then sends in the Moabite women to corrupt them morally, and that works. So they do have a history, and so it is interesting that Isaiah, he really is sort of emphasizing the horrors of war and how terrible it is for the Moabites
in a way that he doesn't do with any of the other groups that he prophesies to. So
yeah,
this is an interesting one for that reason.
Yeah. So yeah, the other interesting part is the everyone's head is bald and every beard is cut off. This is symbolism of humiliation.
Well, they did that. They did that to present themselves to their gods in order to, show how much they really wanted to have their request granted.
Yeah.
But in this case, of course, they're false gods. So what? There's no outcome here.
Yeah, the Moabites are in full Canaanite demonic religion. At this point.
Right, and he mentions the names of 3 false gods in here to double down on what's going on.
Well, what did you name those? That's an interesting.
Dibon, Nebo, and Medeba. So he's not pulling any punches about who they are and what they're doing, and he's not forgiving them for their absolutely pagan status.
And these were each associated with high places, and that's addressed in here too. The whole idea of high places, that these false gods, these demonic entities, inhabit these high places. They're associated with mountains, so that's one of the interesting connections that I made when Jesus says, if you have faith of a size of a mustard seed, you'll say to this mountain, be thrown into the sea. And I believe that that's actually a reference to the demonic entity in the mountain. And it directly parallels what Jesus did with the Gadarene demoniac and the legion of demons that were within him that Jesus then cast into the sea. And a direct parallel to the to my interpretation of that. Say to this mountain, be cast into the sea. He's not talking about a pile of dirt. He's talking about a spiritual entity, I believe. So, although I haven't heard anyone else ever make that argument before.
Well, I think he really did also mean that if you really wanted to, you could cast a mountain into the sea, but not very many people have that inclination. So.
Right. I mean, in terms of, that supernatural power is not limited to dealing with spiritual entities, obviously. But
it's like that same old debate about the mustard seed. The mustard seed might not have been the smallest of seeds, but it was visible when you held it up from a distance, which the smallest of seeds would not have been, and it made the point.
It may have been the smallest in the marketplace.
Exactly. So, shall we quibble over these things? No.
Well, my point isn't to quibble. It's to suggest that there's an underlying meaning to the Christ's saying, as so many of he said he spoke in parables.
This is a perfect thing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Let's jump into chapter 16, shall
we? Okay. I thought this other last bit where he talks about waters of Judgement being full of blood and the sense of no escape being possible, because the person who escapes will be attacked by lions. It's the same old metaphor of someone escaping from one thing to go into their house and lean against the wall out of breath and having a viper attack them from the wall. It's just that you can't beat God, if he's going to wreak vengeance upon your people and your situation, you will be.
You're not getting out of it.
To vengeance, right?
There are 1,000 ways. There are 1,000,000 ways he can complete his work. Anyway, all right, chapter 16.
Here we go. Send the lamb to the ruler of the land from Selah. Whoops, my thing keeps jumping ahead. To the wilderness, to the mount of the daughter of Zion, for it shall be as a wandering bird thrown out of the nest. So shall be the daughters of Moab at the fords of the Ammon. Take counsel, execute judgment, make your shadow like the night in the middle of the day. Hide the outcasts. Do not betray him who escapes. Let my outcasts dwell with you, O Moab. Be a shelter to them from the face of the spoiler. For the extortioner is at an end. Devastation ceases. The oppressors are consumed out of the land. In mercy, the throne will be established, and one will sit on it in truth, in this tabernacle of David, judging and seeking justice and hastening righteousness.
We have heard of the pride of Moab, an excessive pride, even of his arrogance, pride, and fury. His idle boasts are false. Therefore Moab shall wail. Everyone of Moab shall wail. You shall moan for the raisin cakes of Kir Hareseth, as those who are utterly stricken. For the walls of Heshbon have withered, the vines of Sibmah as well. The lords of the nations have trampled down its choice clusters, which reached as far as Jazer and wandered to the deserts. Its tendrils spread themselves out, passed over the sea. Therefore I will weep bitterly for Jazer, for the vine of Sibmah. I will drench you with my tears, O Heshbon and Eliah, for the shouting over your summer fruits and your harvest has fallen away. Gladness and joy are taken away from the fruitful fields. In the vineyards also there will be no cries of joy or jubilant shouting. No threader treads out wine in the presses, for I have made the shouting to cease. That's the end of verse 10. So here we are. It's a continuation of the message to and about Moab.
So what he's saying here is kind of make peace, send the land to the ruler of the land, means go pay your tribute while you still can before they wipe you out.
which indicates that it probably is Assyria that is the aggressor here. I think that's most likely case.
But the symbolism is interesting. That a lamb would be the required sacrifice to the Lord, especially on Passover.
Well, to the ruler of the land, not necessarily to the Lord.
No, but if you substitute the person that you should be paying tribute to,
right?
This is how they messed up in the first place. They did not follow the Abrahamic faith, but the one that made itself available once they broke off from the Israelis and went their pagan way. So it's kind of I don't know, I just find it sort of a little symbol stuck in there of what went wrong. And then that little metaphor of the bird thrown out of the nest, I think the way the scripture uses animal metaphors and
it's very significant.
It's very beautiful, and this one in particular, if you've ever picked up a little bird that's fallen out of the nest, there's nothing more helpless and pathetic, and you just, there's not much you can do for them. We've tried saving several of them, and it never seems to work.
I want to tell my story of the little birdie on one of the cruises that we took. We were way out in the ocean somewhere, and as usual, I got up very early to go walking. No one else was out on the deck, but there was a little bird, an exhausted bird, that was like hunched up against the corner of the wall, and I picked it up and I just held it in my hands. It just sat there, and then the sun. It was just twilight and just about to be sunrise, and so we stood at the balcony together, watching the sunrise. And then after a little while, the bird was well enough and flew off. It was just really cool. It was one of those special moments that you get with God's creation.
Fred Meyer moment.
A Fred Meyer moment. And of course, that brings up Fred Meyer. Fred Meyer is the name of the
sand dollar
of a sand dollar. But the name is the Fred Meyer supermarkets in Portland, Oregon. But we were on the Oregon coast, and we were stopping at different beaches as we were driving north. And we stopped at one. Once again, it's very early in the morning, and I found, for the first time ever, a perfect sand dollar. I've never found a perfect sand dollar.
We thought it was just a shell, there's something that got washed up.
Yeah, so I was going to keep it for my collection. So I actually set it on the dashboard. We drove up and we stopped a little, not too much further up, and then I picked it up and I was holding it. I go, I wonder if this is still alive, right? I mean, I hadn't thought about that before, and it was like, because it's just so perfect. And all of a sudden, this is I right hand to God. And as soon as I said that, this little white finger comes out from the hole in the middle of the bottom of the sand dollar and touched my finger. It was like I'm alive, I'm here. And but it was perfect timing. It was just another precious moment. And so I took it and brought it back down to the beach that was there. But anyway,
we named him Fred Meyer because it seemed appropriate.
Yeah. So Anyway, two of my special moments with God's creation stories. All right, and Kathy said, "Wow, I never thought of that before, but I'm not sure to what you're referring." She never thought of something that we mentioned regarding one of the scriptures. What do you what you were you referencing?
The
Kathy?
little bird falling out of.
No, I think that was before I said that story. Oh, it could.
I just was talking about the metaphors and symbols that the Lord uses of animals and their behavior and how He sort of plans whole scenarios.
Well, it's the mountain reference.
Oh, the mountain.
Yeah, the idea of throwing in the sea. Yeah, it was kind of like a mini epiphany that I had thinking about that one day. That actually makes sense, and it does align with what Jesus actually did.
What she might not understand is the association of individual mountains or hills with the presence of a demon.
Mountains meaning the high places. Yeah, that's what they are. Well, they're more like hills. It's not like the gigantic peaks. They're accessible hills that are just higher than everything around them, and they have spiritual significance.
And they would have a name already, like Zebub was the name of one. And so they named the demon that was associated with that place
Baal, meaning Lord.
Zebub, because Bel or Baal means Lord. And so it was the Lord of that hill.
Lord of the mountain, that hill. Now, if you get my newsletter, go to scottlives.net, the picture that we use in the masthead that Anne took is of me standing on the high place of Tel Gezir, which was a Canaanite stronghold where there was a well, and you can see Jaffa, the port of Jaffa at the coast, standing on that hill. It's not that far, maybe 10 miles away, and on the top of that hill are these phallic-shaped poles that represent. That's what they did on the high places. They were engaged in male and female called prostitution. And
a tell is a little bit different because that's usually, as I understand it, a series of inhabited places built one on top of the other that eventually form a hill and then either are abandoned or have a final.
Well, however the hill gets there,
yeah.
This was a high place because it was being used for that purpose, and what was really interesting, I didn't realize that the wells that they dug, it wasn't like digging a well straight down like you do here. Maybe they did those also. These were ramps. They dug a tunnel into the ground at an angle that you could walk down, and they kept going until they got to water.
And you just took your bucket.
You just walked down and walked back up, and it was very deep. I remember now at the top, because I guess the ground had continued to accumulate, but so there was sort of this opening that went straight down with staircase to get you to where the original ground level was, and then it goes at an angle. It was big enough to drive a good size pickup truck down into, if you want, or even bigger than that, maybe even a.
I think they had a number of different types of these wells, but that one was probably for a communal well where a whole bunch of people had to use it at once, and that was the reason to make it like a sort of highway.
And probably different sized tunnels, but this was quite impressive to me, and that was what allowed people living in that stronghold to survive being besieged or whatever. So all right, so okay, let's go. We left off with verse 10.
Finished that one.
Left off, so 11 to you.
We started out with the lamb and we ended this one.
We're not done
No,
yet.
we haven't
11.
done.
We got 4 more in this chapter, and then I'll pick up with 17.
4 more. So where are we? We're on
11, 16, 11 to you.
Therefore my heart shall resound like a harp for Moab, and my inner being for Kir Heres. And it shall come to pass when it is seen that Moab is weary on the high place, that he will come to his sanctuary to pray, but he will not prevail. This is the word which the Lord has spoken concerning Moab since that time. But now the Lord has spoken, saying, within 3 years, as the years of a hired man, the glory of Moab will be despised with all that great multitude, and the remnant will be very small and feeble.
Yeah, so
apparently, there's some sort of historical footnote by the scholars that was added after the fulfillment of the prophecy, but within Isaiah's lifetime, so he may have footnoted it or something. So,
or the scholars could be wrong.
To mark, it could be, but this I think this is genuine historicity or something. It was respected by the person who did the scholarship, who generally does not respect the Deutero-Isaiah people.
All right.
So anyway, that we don't have any way of knowing what happened to the Moabites, except this one little piece here that says, 3 years after this prophecy, the Moabites were wiped out. So who knows? But at any rate, this is the sort of evidence that the prophecy came true, if you will.
So, okay. So anything more you want to address on
Not me.
any of that? Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of depth, not a lot of stuff you can really get your teeth on in here. Just lamentation over Moab. So, okay, let's start with. I'll read the first 5 of chapter 17, which is against Damascus, which is Aram, and her ally Israel. So remember, Isaiah is a prophet to the Judeans. And although Israel is concluded, there are prophecies to Israel, and there is history of the interaction of the Judeans and the Israelites. This Isaiah is a prophet to Judea. The oracle concerning Damascus. Behold, Damascus is about to be removed from being a city and become a fallen ruin. The cities of Aurora are forsaken. They will be for flocks to lie down in, and there will be no one to frighten them. The fortified city will disappear from Ephraim, and sovereignty from Damascus. And the remnant of Aram, they will be like the glory of the sons of Israel, declares the Lord of hosts. Now it will come about in that day that the glory of Jacob will fade, and the fatness of his flesh will become lean. It will be even like the reaper gathering the standing grain, as his arm harvests the ears, or it will be like one gleaning ears of grain in the valley of Rephaim. You want me to go? Yeah, go ahead. Read from 6.
Yet gleaning grapes will be left in it, like the shaking of an olive tree, 2 or 3 olives at the top of the uppermost bough, 4 or 5 in its most fruitful branches, says the Lord God of Israel. In that day a man will look to his Maker, and his eyes will have respect for the Holy One of Israel. He will not look to the altars, the work of his hands. He will not respect what his fingers have made, nor the wooden images, nor the incense altars. In that day his strong cities will be as a forsaken bough and an uppermost branch, which they left because of the children of Israel, and there will be desolation. Because you have forgotten the God of your salvation and have not been mindful of the rock of your stronghold, therefore you will plant pleasant plants and set out foreign seedlings.
Mhm. Yes, so there it is, and Damascus and northern Israel being addressed in this. They're in cahoots.
Now, Damascus did not get wiped out.
No, that's a prophecy. In fact, Damascus is the oldest standing city in the world.
Inhabited, yeah. 8,000 years.
Yeah.
So it's possible that this is mainly addressed to Ephraim, and the Damascus is, where he says the kingdom from Damascus and the remnant of Syria, they will be the glory of the children of Israel. So the idea is that the exchange of the combination of Israel and Damascus is going to, the glory will rub off on Damascus and Israel will be pulverized. I don't know, maybe that's the gist of this. But at any rate, in this case, the prophecy did not come true as far as Damascus goes.
Or it's indicating that this is a much further fulfillment. I mean,
true.
Because all the prophecies do come true, and if it hasn't happened yet, then it means that it's just simply a yet to be fulfilled prophecy. It doesn't mean that it's false. Like, that's my interpretation of.
Where is it again exactly?
Damascus, Syria. That's the capital of Syria.
Right, but where is it in relation to Israel?
It's northeast.
Is it close to the border?
Northeast. Well, it's I don't know how many miles from the current border with Israel, but it's I would say it's probably at least 100. But let me see if I can find it on one of my maps here. Yeah, I was going to talk geography, which some people aren't really all that interested in geography, but too bad for them.
Are you pointing the fingers?
No, I want to talk about you. No. But if the shoe fits. All right, let's see. All right. Now this doesn't have.
No, Damascus.
That was ancient.
Even though it was continuously occupied?
Let's see. That's Egypt. No, it's not in that one. I didn't do advanced planning for this. This is sort of spontaneous, obviously.
Once again, we have these beautiful images, or at least, such striking images. The tree with only a few olives at the uppermost branch, and the vine with only a tiny, amount of grapes left on it. And the whole idea being that with humans,
there's the
only poverty of fruitfulness is possible. But when you turn to God, then you have abundance.
Well, this shows in this map here. This is the Greek. This is the Greek Empire, but it's the best picture that includes Damascus. And that looks like probably pretty close to the existing border. Oh, here's another one here.
Right across from Tyre and Sidon.
Yeah, so
it would have been, a natural partner of northern Israel.
yeah, so here's another one there. You can look up there in the upper left corner. You can see Damascus in relation to Israel. Anyway, for what it's worth.
It wasn't the first time that they had teamed up against Judah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But there we are. So it's closer. Well, I think the Golan Heights, I don't think the border of present day Israel goes as far north as it shows in these pictures here. I should get my relief map out. Have that out in the garage.
Let's do that
next time. Yeah. Okay, 135 miles to Jerusalem. Don is saying, yeah. That, of course, Jerusalem's a ways down, but that, yeah. So Damascus is not all that far from the border of modern Israel. So, because I know that there has been some bombing runs of late where Israel was taking out Hezbollah weapons caches and shipments. But those planes can go all over the entire Middle East, so that doesn't tell you anything about distance.
Well, the whole place is pretty small. It only took us, a couple hours to drive from northern Israel all the way down to...
It's surprising how close everything is in Israel. You read the Bible and you're used to living Americans living in a big country and everything's distant. But you can stand, we were standing at Peter's house on the northern tip of the Sea of Galilee. You can see the place. You can see where the place was that Christ drove the pigs down into the sea. You don't need binoculars, and it's the whole current country's only 19 miles wide. So
it is. It's astonishing.
Very, very small.
But, Jesus walked around it continuously.
Yeah.
And, it makes it a lot easier to understand the Bible when you know.
Yeah, and when you're standing on the Temple Mount, for example, you can practically hit the Mount of Olives with a rock if you got a good arm. It's not that far away.
We didn't hit
do
the
that.
Mount of Olives with a rock.
No. But we walked through the Kidron Valley, and we were up on the Mount of Olives. So, anyway.
Us and a lot of goats and sheep.
Yeah. And that the King's Highway was mentioned. I don't know if it was this week or last week. The King's Highway includes the Kidron Valley, and that when we were staying at the Christchurch Guest House, the last time we were there was a Messianic Jewish guy who had just accepted Christ like 2 or 3 years before, and he was just passionate about learning the history and lining everything up. He gave us a sort of off the grid.
Did he make that map, the relief map that they had?
It might have been. He might have been the one that did that.
The beautiful map of Jerusalem, made it, one of those relief maps that's on a large table. And, he was showing us everything.
He took us, we went from the Temple Mount, came off that, we went north through the Muslim quarter and then took a right. And then right there is the Kidron Valley is right before you. There's a road that goes through, but we were standing right at the corner. He's saying, this is where Abraham came with the returning, with the captives he had rescued.
Yeah,
and
he had a whole bunch of stuff.
It was just, he brought it to life.
Yeah.
And then we start walking down the Kidron Valley, and he stops, and there's a storm drain there. And he said, listen, and he says, that's the brook Kidron. And it was, like 20 feet below the current level of the ground, but that's where the valley floor was, and the water from the brook is still running through there. And then so we go a little further, and this is, you're standing between the Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives, and you would think this place is overrun with tourists in both of those places, right? They're just, it's wall to wall. But here in this valley in between, it's like a no man's land that nobody goes into. We were getting, except only the locals.
Well, part of the reason for that is that you get thrown stones at.
Well, there's that.
The Arab youth.
But so he's taken us down. There were like 10 of us total, and he's taken us down, and there's these mounds of dirt everywhere, and he said this is the Arabs are excavating under the Temple Mount beneath the mosque, right? And they're getting rid of all the artifacts that indicate that this is Israeli territory, Israelite territory. And I picked up in one of those mounds what someone later, one of archaeologists said that's a 10th century urn handle. I went to that place, and it was just dumped there, and because they're trying to eliminate the Israeli past.
We did not take it out of the country.
It's not sitting in my office.
No, it's not.
No.
We gave it to someone in the country.
Anyway, we got so you're walking along, and there in the hillsides there are graves that are ancient graves that are just abandoned. They're open. There's trees growing out of them. There's no one's taking care of the place.
Wild dogs living in them.
Yeah, and then we go a little further, and there's a decomposing sheep carcass right on the side of the path. And so it's like nobody ever goes down here. And then we go a little further, and then there's these young Palestinian preteen boys. They're up on the hill, and as we come by, they start throwing rocks.
Their aim was not.
They were not good. It wasn't like they weren't pitching them like fastballs. It was more like lobbing them, in a, they were sort of rehearsing for rock throwing. They're in kindergarten rock throwers.
None of us got hit.
No. But then they followed us down. It got a little concerning when they came down the hill and followed us. And we were going, and it was Yom Kippur. So the Israeli police were all off duty. I mean, they were just a skeleton crew. And so there was no...
Well, the Israeli police sort of chased us out of there anyway. So
maybe, I don't know.
We're glad that they were not present.
And so we wanted this to go down to the pool of Siloam, which we made it down there, but it was all gated up, and we were trying to get somebody that lived above it to get the key and come down and let us in. And the boys all showed up at that point with us, and so I went and just made friends with the leader, and who was very impressed and very pleased that he was talking with an American. And it was showing off his English and all that. So we became buddies, and we walked the rest. We had to turn around and walk the rest of the way back. But right there, that's where the city of David actually begins, to the south of the Temple Mount. It's like right above the pool of Siloam is that place. And then this guy's given us all this history, a lot of things I don't even remember.
This is adventure tourism.
Yeah.
We don't recommend it.
Yeah. I was trying to get somebody to take me to Nablus, which is where Shechem was. Modern Nablus is very close, overlapping, or where Shechem, which is one of the most important historical sites in Israel, that it's Muslim territory, so you can't. But I learned that if you hire a Muslim guide, they won't bother you when you're with the guide because they won't interfere with someone making a living. And so if you're being if you're paying for that guide, you're off limits to harassment.
Well, they let you in the Dome of the Rock Mosque.
Well, yeah,
With
the
the guide,
Al-Aqsa Mosque.
with the
I
guide.
wouldn't take me in, but he came up to our group and he said, you would like a tour of the mosque? So, and everybody else went, ah. I said, yeah. And what it is, he basically just walked me, which I wouldn't have dared to do by myself, but he walked me down along the side, and there's these big window openings with no glass, and then so I could see inside this big gigantic empty hall with like pillars around the outside edge, and a
Like
big
the
open
Greek
space in the
Orthodox.
middle. Yeah, and they're a bunch of them are in there with the prayer rugs and all that stuff. And so it was a unique experience. I don't know how many people ever get to do that. And I gave him $10 or something, and then rejoined the group. But anyway, all right, we have 9 more minutes. We've got to at least finish up.
Okay.
Chapter 17. Was that? Yeah.
We're on 17.
Yeah, it was 17, and I read through verse
So we're on 11.
5. Oh no, that's right. We're on 11. Go ahead.
In the day you will make your plant to grow, and in the morning you will make your seed to flourish. But the harvest will be a heap of ruins in the day of grief and desperate sorrow. Woe to the multitude of many people who make a noise like the roar of the seas, and to the rushing of nations that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters. The nations will rush like the rushing of many waters, but God will rebuke them, and they will flee far away and be chased like the chaff of the mountains before the wind, like a rolling thing before the whirlwind. Then behold, at eventide, trouble, and before the morning he is no more. This is the portion of those who plunder us, and the lot of those who rob us.
Yeah, so that concludes this sort of package of rebukes to that group. Those who plunder us and pillage us, right? So these are the Judeans, basically. Isaiah on behalf of the Judeans, prophesying all of these things. And now he's going to switch, and in chapter 18, he's going to switch to Ethiopia, which is nowhere near Israel. It's down to the south of Egypt. It was called Cush. In the
we can read this.
Yeah.
It's one of the most unusual chapters in the Bible.
It's
nobody quite knows what it's doing in here.
We got time.
Go ahead.
Alas, O land of whirring wings, which lies beyond the rivers of Cush, which sends envoys by the sea, even in papyrus vessels on the surface of the waters. Go, swift messengers, to a nation tall and smooth, to a people feared far and wide, a powerful and oppressive nation, whose land the rivers divide. All you inhabitants of the world and dwellers on earth, as soon as a standard is raised on the mountains, you will see it. And as soon as the trumpet is blown, you will hear it. For thus the Lord has told me, I will look from my dwelling place quietly, like dazzling heat in the sunshine, like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. For before the harvest, as soon as the bud blossoms and the flower becomes a ripening grape, then he will cut off the sprigs with the pruning knives and remove and cut away the spreading branches.
They will be left together for the mountain birds of prey and for the beasts of the earth. The birds of prey will summer on them, and all the beasts of the earth will winter on them. In that time, a present will be brought to the Lord of hosts from a people tall and smooth of skin, and from a people terrible from their beginning onward, a nation powerful and treading down, whose land the rivers divide, to the place of the name of the Lord of hosts, to Mount Zion.
And of course, what comes to my mind in reading this is that the key to the whole thing is verse 7. And of course, the numbering of the Bible was done much later, but it's interesting that in biblical numerology, the number of perfection is 7. At that time, a gift of homage will be brought to the Lord of hosts from a people tall and smooth. That what springs to my mind is the Ark of the Covenant, because it's long been claimed by the Ethiopians that they have it, and it's certainly possible that that's the case. Now, the Ethiopian Christianity, and I've only been to Addis Ababa in the airport, never left. But I tell you, it's the most exotic group of people of any, even more than Vladivostok when we went there. When we went to Vladivostok.
And what about the crossing into?
I'm talking about an airport setting, but the crossing from Uganda to Kenya, also very, very exotic. But this, I think I was the only American, at least white American, in the airport at the time, and that the people who were in there were dressed in native costumes. It was like stepping back 100 years or 1,000 years, and the airport itself is all modern and kiosks and everything. But the people that were in it, and they're all kind of looking at me, like who is this strange fellow?
Oh, you get looked at a lot anywhere in Africa.
Yeah, I was on my way. I was doing a layover on one of the trips to Uganda. Actually, it's probably the first. Must have been the first one. And I remember I fell asleep as the plane came out of Rome. It was exhausting. It took me 2 days to get to Uganda, to Kampala, and I remember waking up in the plane after falling asleep on takeoff from Rome, and woke up over the Sahara Desert and looking down and seeing nothing but this gigantic sea of sand as far as the eye can see. Never seen anything like it before. And in the middle of it, this blue ribbon from the north all the way to the south, as far as you could see, of the Nile River. No vegetation or anything growing on it, just this blue and gold.
Since we have 2 minutes, could I add my little observation about the present? This people, tall and smooth, were one of the first national groups to be converted to Christianity. And after the incident with Stephen, we don't hear what happens, with the eunuch who goes from Stephen to his own country. But we know that the Ethiopians became one of the most faithful people groups to adopt Christianity, which they held on to fiercely through all kinds of horrible disasters and famines and, being literally starved out by oppressors, and retained to this day, a fiercely cherished version of Christianity. And also they claim the Ark.
And they have
people who have flourished in their faith since the time of Christ.
But the Bible, the Ethiopian Bible, has every single book, no matter how crazy it is. It's on the edges of the fringe of the Apocrypha.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have run out of time. We're at 4:59, and actually, this has turned out to be a fun study. I thought, this stuff seemed kind of dry, but I think I'm actually sort of pumped at the end. I love telling stories anyway. But anyway, close with the coffee house prayer. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. We will see you folks next time. God bless you.